Here are the top stories for today, July 27, 2020. President Duterte focuses on the government's response to COVID-19 in his fifth State of the Nation address. The president calls for the revival of death penalty for heinous crimes related to illegal drugs. SWS says 72% of Filipinos have received financial aid from the government amid the pandemic. And the Senate plans to hold its probe on Philhealth's issues by the end of July or next week. Good day, I'm Rom Dulfo. Welcome to PNA Newsroom. President Duterte delivered his fifth and penultimate State of the Nation address, or SONA, today, which centered on the Philippines' COVID-19 recovery plan. He said given the country's strong fiscal position and robust banking system, he assured Filipinos that the country is in a better position to weather the raging pandemic. When the pandemic struck, President Duterte said he decided to prioritize life over other considerations. He says the experts believe that the interventions that the government had put in place prevented as much as 1.3 to 3.5 million infections. Let's watch this.
We initially encountered difficulties ramping up our testing capacity. We now have 93 accredited testing laboratories nationwide, and we are aiming to conduct 1.4 million tests by end of July. Under the Social Amelioration Program, we allotted 2.5 billion or to 2.5 billion for poor and low-income households who were affected during this pandemic. We came up with the COVID-19 Adjustment Measures Program, extended financial assistance to over 650,000 affected individuals in the formal sector, 110 OFWs abroad, and almost 83,000 repatriated OFWs. This health emergency stretched government's resources to its limits. In response to the Office of the President, worked closely with Congress for the quick passage of the Bayanihan to Heal as One Act. May I again reiterate my thanks to you, the men and women of Congress, for the effort you invested in passing that law. I hope that we can get some or the same treatment of clarity, purpose, and the fastness to support the passage of the Bayanihan Recover to Act as One, which is supplement funds for recovery and response against the impact of COVID-19 pandemic.
President Duterte urges government agencies to lead the way in COVID-19 recovery efforts. He ordered TESDA to come up with special training programs to retool OFWs and find employment opportunities. He also urged the Agriculture and Trade and Industry departments to prioritize agro-entrepreneurship programs for affected OFWs.
I asked TESDA to come up with special training programs to retool our OFWs so they can find employment opportunities here and at home. I am also calling on the CHED for scholarship programs for the qualified dependents of our OFW. I direct the Department of Agriculture and DTI to come up with the agribusiness and entrepreneurship projects to help displaced OFWs rebuild their livelihood. Further, I ask the Land Bank and other government financial institutions to continue providing low-interest loans to our OFW. Sa mga kababayan ko na naghihirap sa ibang bansa. Nandito na ang inyong gobyerno para matulungan kayo at inyong mga pamilya, lalo na sa panahong ito.
President Duterte says telco companies should shape up or face expropriation if their services do not improve by the end of the year. President Duterte complained about the less than ideal services of Globe Telecom and Smart Communications, saying he might take drastic steps against the companies if they do not improve.
Alam mo itong nagbibigay ng mga public services, you better improve. Huwag naman ninyo kaming pahintayin 10 taon bago kami makakamit ng mga services that the other countries are enjoying. If you are not ready to improve, I might just as well close all of you and we revert back to the line telephone. At kukunin ko yan, i-expropriate ko sa gobyerno.
President Duterte pushes for the passage of a law imposing death penalty by lethal injection. The chief executive has repeatedly expressed his position, saying it will instill fear among criminals. Interior Secretary Eduardo Año, for his part, says the passage of the death penalty for drug cases is long overdue and will be a deterrent against illegal drugs.
I reiterate the swift passage of a law reviving the death penalty by lethal injection for crimes specified under the Comprehensive Dangerous Act of 2002. This law will not only help us deter criminality, but also save our children from the dangers posed by the illegal and dangerous drugs.
Amid the threat posed by the pandemic, lawmakers opened the second regular session of the 18th Congress this morning in a hybrid manner. 17 senators are physically present at the plenary, while 6 senators were online. Present at the session hall were Senate President Vicente Soto III, Senate President pro tempore Ralph Recto, Majority Leader Juan Miguel Zubiri, Minority Leader Franklin Drilon, Senators Sonny Angara, Christopher Lawrence Bongo, Francis Tolentino, Ronald Bato de la Rosa, Panfilo Lacson, Sherwin Gatchalian, Joel Villanueva, Pia Cayetano, Grace Poe, Nancy Binay, Lito Lapid, Bong Revilla, and Risa Ontiveros. On the other hand, virtually present were Senators Cynthia Villar, Manny Pacquiao, Amy Marcos, Aquilino Pimentel III, Richard Gordon, and Francis Pangilinan. Soto said the Senate opened the second regular session of the 18th Congress with a sense of urgency and a purpose as the nation continues to grapple with the coronavirus disease pandemic. As Senate President, Soto said he would be very willing to lead his colleagues to craft a holistic agenda that will focus on the following legislative concerns: digital landscape, distance learning, public transport system, encouraging new business, and support for the arts. He said legislators also need to support programs that will help the education sector migrate to more plausible learning platforms. To revive the economy, he said it is also imperative the country has a safe, efficient, and dependable public transport system. House Speaker Alan Peter Cayetano thanked his colleagues for their work despite the intrigues and supposed politicking thrown against them. Cayetano cited the passage of the 2020 national budget in record time and the historic session held outside the Batasan following the eruption of Taal volcano in January. He called on his colleagues to focus on improving the agriculture, tourism, and manufacturing sectors through the rollout of infrastructure programs as the country recovers from the effects of COVID-19. He urged Congress to unite in developing rural areas to decongest cities and convince Filipinos abroad to return home, and reminded his fellow lawmakers that they are not VIPs. He said the most important people are their constituents. Still to come, the PCOO maintains the government has responded enough to the challenges of COVID-19. The SWS says 72% of Filipinos have received financial aid from the government amid the pandemic. More on these when the PNA Newsroom continues.
Tandaan ang tamang paraan ng paghuhugas at paglilinis ng kamay upang makaiwas sa iba't ibang karamdaman. Basain ng tubig ang mga kamay at sabunin. Unang sabunin ang mga palad at ang likod ng mga kamay. Kuskusin na maigi ang pagitan ng mga daliri at maging ang mga kuko. Isunod ang pagitan ng mga hinlalaki at kuskusin ng paikot ang mga dulo ng mga daliri sa magkabilang palad. Banlawang mabuti ang mga kamay sa malinis na tubig at patuyuin ang mga kamay gamit ang single-use towel o air dryer. Basta't sama-sama at laging handa, kaya natin to! Isang paalala mula sa DOH, PCOO, KBP at ng himpilang ito. Alamin ang tamang paraan ng pag-ubo upang mapigilan ang paglaganap ng Coronavirus Disease 2019. Ugaliing magdala ng panyo o tissue. Kung uubo o babahing, takpan ang buong ilong at bibig gamit ang panyo o tissue. Kung walang dalang panyo o tissue, maaaring gamitin ang braso na pantakip. Kung nakararamdam na kailangan umubo o bumahing, agad na dumistansya sa mga tao sa paligid. Huwag dumura kung saan-saan, gumamit ng tissue at itapon sa basurahan. Ugaliin ang paghuhugas ng kamay at paggamit ng alcohol o hand sanitizer upang mamatay ang mikrobyo. Basta't sama-sama at laging handa, kaya natin to! Isang paalala mula sa DOH, PCOO, KBP at ng himpilang ito.
You're still watching PNA Newsroom. PCOO Secretary Martin Andanar stressed that the Duterte administration has done enough to address the coronavirus disease pandemic. Andanar said despite limited resources, the government was able to manage the COVID-19 crisis by implementing various programs aimed at helping Filipinos. Secretary Andanar made the remarks even after the government had received a failing grade from several experts for its response to the COVID-19 pandemic. He said critics are entitled to their own opinion and that most Filipinos continue to appreciate the Duterte administration's efforts to defeat COVID-19. He said the passage of the proposed Bayanihan 2 into law would enable the government to purchase more COVID-19 test kits and other medical supplies, as well as to continue the cash for work and other subsidy programs of the government. He also acknowledged the help of the private sector and the entire Filipino people to revive the country's economy. Majority of Filipinos have received assistance from the government since the start of COVID-19 pandemic. According to the latest SWS survey, 72% of respondents in both urban and rural areas said they were given money to help them sustain their needs amid the pandemic. In its July 3 to 6 survey, 76% of adult Filipinos affected by the COVID-19 crisis said the government has so far given money to them. The proportion of adult Filipinos who got financial aid from the government was highest in Metro Manila, followed by Balanced Luzon, Mindanao, and the Visayas. 75% of women and 67% of men received cash assistance from the government. The number of adult Filipinos who were provided aid was higher among 18 to 24 years old than among those aged 55 and above. SWS interviewed around 1,555 Filipinos aged 18 and above using a mobile phone and computer-assisted telephones. House Deputy Speaker Johnny Pimentel has tested positive for COVID-19. Attendees to President Duterte's 5th SONA were required to undergo RT-PCR tests on Monday. The lawmaker, who also acts as PDP Laban spokesperson, was one of the very few who were listed to physically attend President Duterte's SONA at the Batasang Pambansa. Pimentel said he is currently isolated, he is okay, and there were no symptoms as of the moment. Baguio City brings back checkpoints to contain the spread of COVID-19, and Bulacan is set to implement zoning strategy or localized lockdown to minimize infections. More on this from Marita Muahe.
In Baguio City, Mayor Benjamin Magalong ordered the re-establishment of checkpoints in the city's 128 barangays following the sharp increase in the number of COVID-19 cases. On Saturday, Baguio City recorded 14 new COVID-19 cases, the highest number recorded in a single day. This brings to a total of 81 cases in the city. Magalong ordered to place checkpoints in some villages to prevent non-essential travels of the residents. The city is also implementing an enhanced risk-based testing targeting 10% of every sector, particularly those susceptible of getting the virus. Returning residents, overseas workers, medical frontliners, and other frontline workers are also being subjected to swab testing. In Bulacan, barangay officials underwent orientation on zoning containment strategy or localized lockdown to contain the spread of the coronavirus disease 2019. Zoning containment strategy will focus on the areas identified as critical zone, containment zone, and buffer zone. Governor Daniel Fernando has earlier cited the vital role of barangay officials in identifying the areas that need attention. In Cebu City, Mayor Edgardo Labella implements localized lockdown in some areas due to the rise of COVID-19 cases. These are Sitio Eja in Barangay Guadalupe, Balaga Drive to Sitio Secalco in Barangay Labangon, Tuwada Compound in Barangay Tisa, Sitio San Isidro, and Abellanosa Compound in Barangay Quiyot, and Simina Extension in Barangay Mabolo. Contact tracing and swabbing will be done on all first-level contacts and suspected COVID-19 positive in those areas. Those found positive of the virus will be transferred to the designated isolation and quarantine facilities in the city. For the PNA Newsroom, I'm Marita Muaje.
In our business news, a total of 5.42 billion pesos worth of loans were released by the Department of Trade and Industry or DTI through its financing arm Small Business Corporation under its Pondo sa Pagbabago at Pag-asenso or P3 program as of June 2020. In DTI's technical report to the Office of the President, over 150,000 individuals have benefited from the microfinancing program of the government. The DTI launched the P3 program in 2017, giving Filipinos better access to finance for them to avoid tapping loan sharks like the 5-6 lending scheme. The government can lend from 5,000 pesos to 200,000 pesos under the P3 program with interest rate not exceeding 2.5%. This was also one of the initiatives that the DTI rolled out in Marawi to help displaced residents and military personnel that were affected by the battle in the city in 2017. Up next, the Senate plans to hold its probe on Philhealth's issues by the end of July or next week. And tourism stakeholders are encouraged to create new ways to adapt to the new normal brought by the COVID-19 pandemic. The PNA Newsroom returns after these reminders.
Alamin kung paano ang tamang pagsusuot ng surgical mask. Una, hawakan ang mask sa strap at siguruhing natatakpan nito ang inyong bibig at ilong. Tandaan, ang may kulay na bahagi ng mask ang dapat nasa labas. Ito lamang ang tamang paraan ng pagsuot nito. Ihulma ang nose piece o maliit na metallic strip ayon sa hugis ng inyong ilong. Iwasan ang paghawak sa inyong ilong at bibig. Kung marumi na ang mask, hubarin ito gamit ang strap at itapon ito sa isang basurahan. Siguruhin ang maayos na paghuhugas ng kamay gamit ang sabon at tubig. Ang surgical mask ay dapat gamitin ng mga pasyenteng may sakit sa baga o mga taong mayroong ubo, sipon at lagnat, mga nag-aalaga sa mga may sakit, at mga healthcare at frontline workers. Maaari ring magsuot nito kung kayo ay pupunta sa matataong lugar. Basta't sama-sama at laging handa, kaya natin to! Isang paalala mula sa DOH, PCOO, KBP, at ng himpilang ito. Sa matinding laban natin sa Coronavirus Disease 2019, sugpuin din natin ang pagkalat ng fake news. Huwag magbahagi ng impormasyon na hindi tiyak ang pinagmulan. I-check mabuti ang source ng balita. Kumuha lamang ng impormasyon mula sa mga official channel ng Department of Health. Huwag magpadala sa maling balita. Basta't sama-sama at laging handa. Kaya natin to! Isang paalala mula sa DOH, PCOO, KBP at ng himpilang ito.
Hearings for the Senate investigation into allegations of corruption and mismanagement in Philhealth could begin either later this week or early next week. Senate President Tito Soto on Monday said those invited to the hearings should be physically present as the Senate's offices are now equipped with the necessary partitions to maintain social distancing. Senator Panfilo Lacson last Friday announced that a Senate inquiry into Philhealth's issues would be among its top priorities upon resuming session. Soto and Lacson cited the rampant allegations of corruption, incompetence, and inefficiency which have affected the management of Philhealth. This announcement follows reports of 3 Philhealth officials tendering their resignations, among them Anti-Fraud Officer Thorson Keith, who cited corruption in the agency as one of his reasons. Malacanang last Friday confirmed that President Rodrigo Duterte also ordered an investigation into the alleged anomalies surrounding the agency after receiving a copy of Keith's resignation letter. Over 100,000 overseas Filipino workers or OFWs have returned to their home provinces amid efforts to help OFWs affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. More on this from William Theo.
More than 106,200 overseas Filipino workers repatriated by the government amid the coronavirus pandemic have been transported to their home provinces. The Department of Labor and Employment, through the Overseas Workers Welfare Administration, reports that the latest batch of homebound OFWs who tested negative for COVID-19 took their rides back to their respective provinces on July 25. Labor Secretary Silvestre Bello III said the government will exhaust all means to help OFWs regain jobs they lost abroad due to the pandemic. This, as Dole said, it has already exceeded the 250,000 OFW beneficiaries of the 2.5 billion emergency fund for COVID-19 affected migrant workers. In Mandaluyong City, the local government announced that some offices will be temporarily closed this week to make way for a regular disinfection. The offices of the Legislative Department and the Secretariat's office at the BOC building were closed starting Monday, July 27. Due to the temporary closure, the public is advised to send their concerns through email or to the assigned security officer on the 3rd floor for concerns addressed to the offices of the city vice mayor, city councilors, and the secretariat. As of July 25, Mandaluyong reported 509 active cases of COVID-19. Meanwhile, the entire skeletal workforce of the Presidential Communications Operations Office will undergo testing for COVID-19. PCOO Secretary Martin Andanar made this statement after the total number of COVID-19 cases among the employees of PCOO proper and its attached agencies jumped to 26. Andanar assured that the PCOO will continue to support the family of employees who have been infected by COVID-19 and ensure the safety of its other personnel. For the PNA Newsroom, I am William Theo.
In our 4 news, North Korea on Sunday registered its first suspected case of novel coronavirus. Local media reported that an individual who illegally entered the country last week through the border city of Kaesong was suspected of COVID-19 and taken under observation. In an emergency meeting, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un said maximum level of measures against the pandemic will be implemented in the country, the report added. Kaesong has been closed to entry and exits since Friday after routine checks, and people traveling to and from the city in the last 5 days have been quarantined, Kim also said. Earlier this year, Pyongyang announced it suspended all travels with China and that there was no COVID-19 threat in the country for the last 6 months. In sports, the Philippine Sports Commission has begun meeting with officials of national sports associations on how national athletes could resume their training in their bid to qualify for the Tokyo Olympics. National Training Director Mark Velasco said the PSC recognizes that the country's Olympic hopefuls need to maintain momentum, and they do that by going back to focused training. Basketball could be the first to resume its Olympic-related training as the Chooks to Go Pilipinas 3x3 already submitted its protocols to the Games and Amusements Board. On Thursday, the PSC's Medical Scientific Athletes Services convened with Dave Carter and Cynthia Carrion Norton, the top officials of judo and gymnastics, respectively. The PSC MSAS has conducted a meeting with officials of golf and karate-do. By the end of the month, the PSC will compile all the practice protocols made by the NSAs, which will be recommended to the Interagency Task Force. Adapting and innovating would be the only way the hard-hit tourism industry could survive under the current landscape brought by the COVID-19 pandemic. This was the collective input during the Leadership Excellence Series 2020 organized by the Tourism Department. Josiah Go, chairman of the Mansmith and Fielders Incorporated, said once activities are allowed, firms should be ready to create compelling offers to attract clients, such as introducing new tour attractions timed with mega sale events. In the meantime, Go said companies should find creative ways to lure other markets, like offering alternative work areas. Francis Kong, president of Success Options Incorporated and director of Inspire Leadership Consultancy, likewise noted that companies should move towards digital marketing as the world enters the so-called contactless economy. Meanwhile, DOT NCR Director Woodrow Makiling said Philippine tourism has consistently proven its resilience and its ability not only to bounce back as a sector, but to lead the country's economic and social recovery. Let's take another look at today's biggest stories. President Duterte focuses on the government's response to COVID-19 in his fifth State of the Nation address. The president calls for the revival of death penalty for heinous crimes related to illegal drugs. SWS says 72% of Filipinos have received financial aid from the government amid the pandemic. And the Senate plans to hold its probe on Philhealth's issues by the end of July or next week. Thank you for watching another episode of the PNA Newsroom. To check more news content, visit our webpage or head on to the Philippine News Agency's Facebook and Twitter accounts. For more news about the government, how it serves Filipinos, look for these hashtags on all our social media platforms and websites. We are shown on the pages of the PCOO and its attached agencies. Also watch us on television on PTV4 and IBC 13. And that's your daily dose of the biggest stories that you need to know from PNA Newsroom. I am Rom Dulfo. Good day and stay safe.